I want you to listen to the sound of your own life right now. Can you hear it? It's a high-pitched whine. It's the sound of an engine running at 8,000 RPMs in second gear. It's the sound of Redline. I'm speaking specifically to the men in the room who are building empires. The founders, the executives, the men who carry the weight of payroll, the weight of investors, and the weight of the market on their backs. You're successful by every metric of the modern world. Revenue, EBITDA, status, assets. You're winning. But if we put a stethoscope to your chest or a thermal camera on your soul, we would see something dangerous. We would see heat. You're vibrating. You wake up in the morning and the cortisol is already spiking. You walk into the office and you feel like you have to physically push the walls out to make room for your ambition. You come home and you're so wired that you can't sit still with your wife. You're physically present, but spiritually, you're still at war. You've convinced yourself that this is the price of admission. You tell yourself stress is fuel. You tell yourself anxiety is just the cost of doing business. You believe that the only way to generate power, the only way to scale, is to burn something. To burn your time, to burn your adrenal glands, to burn your relationships. I'm here to tell you that you're operating on an obsolete physics model. You're addicted to a form of energy generation that is inefficient, dirty, and ultimately catastrophic. I call it hot fusion. It works until the reactor melts down. And looking at you, watching how you move, listening to the tone of your voice, you're about 5 degrees away from a meltdown. But there is another way. There is a way to generate infinite output with zero heat. There is a way to scale your impact without scaling your stress. A way that is silent, sustainable, and terrifyingly efficient. I call it cold resonance. And understanding the difference between these two systems is the difference between a man who burns out at 45 with a heart attack and a king who rules until he dies. Welcome to episode 12. Let's strip away the self-help bullshit and talk about physics. Because leadership is, at its core, the management of energy. Your job as a CEO or a founder is not to do tasks. Your job is to direct energy, to take resources, capital, and human talent and organize them to produce a result. Most of you are doing this using the principle of hot fusion. Think about the sun. The sun generates massive amounts of power. How? Through gravity and friction. It takes hydrogen atoms and crushes them together under immense pressure until they fuse. And this releases energy. But it's violent. It's chaotic. And the byproduct of this process is massive, destructive heat. Now, translate this to your business. How do you generate results right now? You use pressure. We have to hit Q4 targets or else. You use friction. I have to grind harder. I have to fight the market. You use force. I will stay up until 2 a.m. and force this deal to close. You're smashing atoms together using the brute force of your willpower. And yes, it creates energy. It built your company. It made you the first million. But look at the byproduct. Heat. What is the heat in a human being? The heat is the inflammation in your joints. The heat is the chronic insomnia. The heat is the rage you feel when an employee makes a small mistake. The heat is the disconnection from your children because you are too hot to hold them. Hot fusion is dirty energy. It creates waste. It's inefficient because a massive percentage of your input is lost as thermal exhaust. You put in 100 units of effort, but you only get 60 units of results because 40 units were wasted fighting resistance, managing anxiety, and recovering from the damage you did to yourself. You're essentially burning the furniture to keep the house warm. Eventually, you run out of furniture. This is the founder's trap. You think that if you want double the revenue, you need double the heat. You think you need more stress, more pressure, more hours. But the reactor has a limit. You're redlining. And when you redline an engine for too long, you don't get more speed. You throw a rod. So what's the alternative? If we don't use force, how do we get results? Do we just sit around and chant Om? No. We're here to win. We're here to dominate. But we need a new fuel source. I want you to imagine a superconductor. In physics, normally, when you send electricity through a wire, there is resistance. The electrons bump into the atoms of the wire. This friction creates heat and loss. This is why your laptop gets hot when you run too many programs. It's energy battling resistance. But if you cool certain materials down to absolute zero, something miraculous happens. The resistance disappears completely. The electrons align perfectly. They move in unison. The current flows with zero friction, zero heat, zero loss. This means you can put energy in and it flows forever without degrading. This is cold resonance. Excuse me. In a human being, cold resonance is the state of being so aligned with your purpose, with your values, and with your creator that the friction disappears. Hot fusion is forcing a door open with a battering ram. Cold resonance is having the key. When you operate in cold resonance, you aren't hustling. You're executing. There's a distinct difference. Hustle is manic. Hustle is noisy. Hustle sweats. Execution is silent. Execution is precise. Execution is cold. Think about the most dangerous men in history. Think about the highest level leaders. Are they running around screaming? Are they frantic? No, they are terrifyingly calm. They walk into a boardroom and the temperature drops. They speak softly, but everyone leans in. They make one decision and it ripples through the entire organization. Why? Because they aren't wasting energy fighting themselves. They aren't wasting energy on anxiety, which is just fear of the future. They aren't wasting energy on regret, which is just fear of the past. They are 100% present, 100% aligned, and 100% conductive. This is the state of the Stoic king. He doesn't need to burn himself alive to light up the world. He becomes a conduit for power rather than the generator of it. And this is where the conversation shifts from business to spirituality. Because you can't achieve cold resonance with a P&L statement. You can only achieve it by changing your internal physics. If cold resonance is the goal, why are you so hot? Why is there so much friction in your life? Resistance in a wire comes from the atoms vibrating out of alignment. Resistance in a man comes from lies. Every time you lie to yourself, to your market, to your wife, you create resistance. You're staying in a business model you hate because it pays the bills. Friction. You're pretending to be happily married when you're actually roommates. Friction. You're holding on to an employee who is toxic because you're afraid of the confrontation of firing them. Friction. Your system is overheating because you are forcing current through a wire that is degraded. The hustle culture tells you, push harder through the resistance. The resurrection protocol says, fix the wire. If you're exhausted, it isn't because you're doing too much work. It's because you're doing misaligned work. You can work 14 hours a day in cold resonance and finish the day with more energy than you started if the work is pure. But you can work 2 hours a day in hot fusion doing something you hate for people you don't respect and be suicidal by noon. The burnout you're feeling is not a lack of stamina. It's a feedback loop. Your soul is screaming at you. The heat is a warning light on the dashboard. It's saying, check engine. We're not designed for this load. We are out of alignment. But what do? You put tape over the check engine light. You drink more coffee. You take the Adderall. You drink the scotch at night to cool down. You try to numb the heat. But you aren't fixing the alignment. To achieve cold resonance, we have to stop adding fuel to the fire. We have to start removing the friction. So how do we make the shift? Especially if you have been addicted to the adrenaline of the hustle for 10 or 20 years. How do you go from a hot fusion reactor to a superconductor? We need a protocol. This isn't something you affirm in the mirror. This is something you engineer. Phase 1 is cooling the core using silence. You can't fix a machine while it's spinning at 10,000 RPMs. You have to shut it down. This is why I preach solitude and silence. Most executives are terrified of silence. Excuse me. Why? Because in the silence, the motion stops. And when the motion stops, the heat becomes unbearable. When you stop running, you have to feel the pain you've been running from. You have to hear the thoughts you've been drowning out with podcasts and phone calls. But to achieve cold resonance, you must cool the core material. You need 20 minutes a day, minimum, in my opinion, of absolute zero input. No phone, no book, no music, just you and the void. This lowers the cortisol. It stops the vibration. It prepares the wire. Phase 2 is locating resistance using the audit. Once you're cool, you audit the friction. I want you to look at your calendar and your life. Where is the heat coming from? Maybe it's the dragging client, the one who pays you well but abuses your team and ruins your weekends. That is resistance. Fire them. Or maybe it's the ghost employee, the one who hides and drains resources. Fire them. Or maybe it's the lie in the marriage, the conversation you've been avoiding for 3 years. Have it. Every time you remove a source of friction, you lower the temperature of the system. And paradoxically, as you remove these things, your power increases. You do less, but the energy flows cleaner. And phase 3 is the alignment with the superconductor. This is the hardest part for the, quote, self-made man. Hot fusion relies on your energy, your battery. Cold resonance relies on the grid. A superconductor doesn't generate the electricity. It carries it. If you want infinite power, you have to connect to an infinite source. For me, that's God. It's the realization that I am not the source of the mission. I am the steward of it. When you believe you are God, when you believe the entire universe depends on your hustle, you will overheat. The burden is too heavy for a human nervous system. But when you realize you are just the wire, and your job is to keep the wire clean so the power can flow through you, the pressure vanishes. You stop forcing outcomes. You start allowing them. You move with the current of reality, not against it. This is what the Taoists call Wu Wei. I believe I'm pronouncing that right, which is effortless action. This is what the Christians call thy will be done. This is what the athlete calls the flow state. It's all the same physics. Alignment is greater than effort. Let's talk ROI, return on investment. Because I know some of you are thinking, this sounds nice, Acusio, but I have a P&L to manage. I can't just be zen while my competitors are eating my lunch. Here's the irony. The man in cold resonance destroys the man in hot fusion. Every time. Why? Well, one, decision quality. The hot fusion leader makes decisions out of fear, scarcity, and exhaustion. He reacts. The cold resonance leader makes decisions out of clarity and long-term vision. One correct decision is worth 1,000 hours of hustle. Two is sustainability. The hot fusion leader burns out every 18 months. He has down cycles where he's depressed and useless. The cold resonance leader is consistent. He compounds. And third is gravity. People are repelled by manic, needy energy. People are attracted to calm, grounded power. The best talent wants to work for the king, not the slave driver. Stop thinking that suffering is a KPI. Stop thinking that if you aren't bleeding, you aren't working. That is a poverty mindset disguised as a work ethic. You have already proven you can hustle. You have proven you can take the heat. But heat doesn't scale. Heat destroys the machine. If you want to go to the next level, if you want to turn the 7-figure business into the 9-figure legacy, you can't do it by spinning the engine faster. You have to change the engine. So here's the decision you have to make today. Are you going to keep running Redline until the rod throws? Are you going to wait for the heart attack, the divorce, or the bankruptcy to force you to stop? Or are you ready to evolve? I'm speaking specifically to the founders and executives listening to this. You know who you are. You're successful, but you're suffering. You're winning, but you feel like you're losing. You don't need a life coach to tell you to organize your calendar. You don't need a cheerleader. You need a physicist. You need an engineer. You need someone to help you strip out the friction, cool the reactor, and rebuild the system for cold resonance. If you're tired of being the source of all the energy, if you're ready to stop burning and start leading, we need to talk. I invite you to apply for the Resurrection Strategy Call. This is not a sales call. This is an audit. We're going to look at your machine. We're going to find the heat leaks. We're going to find the friction. And we're going to draft the protocol to get you to zero resistance. Go to coachkuz.com and click apply. Be dangerous, but keep it cold. I am Acusio Bavona. I'll see you in the work.